My name's Phil Burst, I am the Managing Director of Elephant Digital. We're based here at Liverpool Science Park on the second floor. We do branding, websites and digital marketing. Nice, straightforward. Today what I want to talk about specifically is social media and how you guys in your companies can create a more effective social media strategy. I'll start by saying social media is a huge topic. I'm going to keep it very, very simple. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 key takeaways today, okay? First question I've got for you is, how good are you at telling a story? In a given day, how many stories do you tell? Personal and professional? How many stories do you hear? How many stick in your mind? Every Wednesday night, whenever I'm free, I go around to my dad's house. He happens to be sitting down there in the front row. Say hello. Hello. I've been brought up in a family where storytelling and competing for the best story is pretty much how you measure your place in the tribe. Wednesday nights at our house are normally filled with some lovely food, normally prepared by my dad, normally some lovely wine, some lovely beer, but predominantly it's about the stories. Sometimes, a lot of the time, my granddad's there, he's 92. There's my dad, my stepmother, 4 brothers and sisters. Sometimes there's cousins and uncles and aunties. And now there's grandkid or kids rolling around as well, still competing for the limelight at 2 years old. And the whole evening is one big storytelling competition. And that story can be, I was on the bus today and I saw a guy drop a laptop and it broke. Or it could be something more dramatic. It could be, have you read in the news X, Y, and Z is happening? How do you feel about Brexit? How do you feel about what's happening X, Y, and Z? And the conversation gets more and more elevated as we go through the evening and voices get louder. And generally speaking, the stories get more and more dramatic. And there's aliens and there's elves and there's Chris Musson in there often. And the reason we do this is because it's a way of connecting. It's a way of connecting as a family and it's a way of connecting as people. So just have that in your mind. I love Walt Disney. I think Walt Disney and the Disney Corporation are one of the best examples of storytellers. I think right from the very, very start, Walt had a vision that was about engaging with people, connecting with people, and telling great stories in a really simple and beautifully elegant way. But let's talk about social media briefly. Let's just ask ourselves, what is social media? Let's just make sure that it's right for us and right for our company, and it's a tool, it's a channel that we feel is appropriate to help get our message out there. So one thing I read the other day was social media is websites and applications that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social networking. Yeah, I can buy that. Another one says social media is a collective of online communities dedicated to community-based input, interaction, content sharing and collaboration. Okay, I'm slightly more excited. Let's break it down into the 2 parts. So the social bit obviously refers to interactions, interacting between people. And the media bit refers to a method of communication. So it could be interacting via some sort of channel. Okay, I'm slightly more comfortable with that. One explanation I read recently in a business-to-business context, if you're selling business to business, is that social media is more of a long-term trust-building process. So it's a method, a way of building trust with people that you want to engage with, customers, prospects, rather than an immediate call to action. Which lots of people kind of, I think, wrongly pigeonhole social media as a channel which you can generate leads instantly. It can do that, but I don't think that's its core purpose. For me, social media is sitting around the campfire. It's going to your dad's on a Wednesday night. And it's talking, sharing ideas, sharing stories, putting the world to right. So when we run our social media masterclasses, which is coming up in a few weeks' time, we talk a lot about storytelling. We talk a lot about this campfire analogy and why that's important in helping you create a really, really good social media strategy. So have that as well in your head over the next couple of slides. How would that work for your company? 3 social media myths. Number 1, social media is a solution for a bad product or company. Agree, disagree? I would argue the opposite is true. A bad product or bad company is exacerbated by the instant and immediate attention you can get these days from social media channels. Number 2, social media will lead to overnight sales success. Unless you're Andy Kent, generally speaking, that is also a myth. There are some examples of some companies and products that have launched with a lot of fanfare using social media, and they have become overnight successes. Generally speaking, as a rule, that's because the product was so innovative and because their go-to-market strategy included lots of things, including social media, that lots of times social media gets the credit for the hard work that's gone into developing a great product. And social media is free. Absolutely free, not a penny. It is free to sign up to Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. But there is a cost. There's a cost in time. And more importantly, these days, there's a cost in advertising as well. Using social media is free. But to do it properly, you need to invest a lot of time, and you probably need to invest in the advertising platforms and each of the different channels you can use. But the most important message I want to get across at the start of this talk is that social media really is part of the marketing mix. It's part of an overall method for going to market, for communicating your message to your customers, to your prospective customers. And I think Andy gave us some great examples of doing this. And he touched on social media many times during his talk. And what I love about what Andy does at Angel Solutions is they've actually got a brand. At the heart of what they do is a lovely, well-formed brand. And that brand creates a very simple message. And that message is predominantly they're trying to change the world by helping teachers do their job better. Who wouldn't want to get involved in that? Who wouldn't want to join that cause? Who wouldn't want to join that story and be a part of that conversation? Now, I'm not saying every company has to have an altruistic aim or objective in their kind of brand message, but having some sort of core message is fundamental to social media. If you can't communicate what you do in the 30 seconds that you get into the elevator with Richard Branson, and he's got £1 million in cash in his back pocket, probably has, and he says, right, go Andy, 30 seconds, pitch to me. You can have the money at the end of it. 30 seconds is not a long time. So why do I use the 30-second analogy? Well, because the 30 seconds normally is the amount of time that someone jumps on their phone, has a little look at Twitter, skips through, see what's going on. Oh, Andy's in a ringmaster outfit again. Great, okay. Social media is quick. It's immediate. It's in the moment. It's instant. So getting your message right comes ahead of having a social media strategy. Does that make sense? A couple of questions that I get asked from people like Andy and clients who come to me and say, I want a social media strategy, Phil. I want to integrate it into my wider marketing strategy and it has to be part of our overall business objectives. They generally ask me all these types of questions, and most of them are very logical, very, very straightforward. I sort of say, yeah, I can take you through this. I can help you answer lots of these questions. But ultimately,
when your dad.
Oh my God, when your dad, they'll turn it off, Your Honour. But ultimately, the most important question they all ask me is why social media? Why should I invest? Why should I spend my time? Why should I hire somebody? Why should I outsource to you, Phil, if that's what I think is the right thing to do? And I say, well, social media is, and will always be, hopefully, part of the wider marketing mix, number one. But also, it can do lots of the things that we talked about right at the start. So it can develop your brand, it can attract new customers, it can generate sales. It's great for brand loyalty and for pushing traffic to your website, for example. But for me, I think it's all about creating a richer experience, about creating a place, a platform to tell your story. And that's why I loved what Andy's talk was all about, because it was all about how do you craft the story. Maybe even for some of you guys in your organizations, how do you actually come up with the idea or even reshift the very fundamental basis of what your company does? Not necessarily changing your product or service, but actually just repositioning yourselves in your own mind first. Because in doing that, you can position yourself in your customers' minds a lot easier. So very, very briefly, I just picked the 5 generally most used platforms. I'm not going to throw any stats here today and any details about each platform, but broadly speaking, just to get you thinking about which social media platform you might want to start with, I'd probably start with these 5. So the far left one is Google+. It is a social media platform. You can share content and stories on it. It's predominantly there for Google so they don't feel left out, and so that they can say that we have a social media platform. It's great if you want to focus on ranking well on Google. I definitely push your content to Google+. It helps with your rankings on Google and getting a better SEO position. If you want to be in the moment and you want to be involved in news and topical debate and quick sharing of content, follow Andy for a start, then Twitter is the platform for you. It's very much in the moment. And as you'll see as we go through these, there's not right or wrongs, as Andy said before. It's only what's right for your business or for your organisation. Facebook is more business to consumer, more peer-to-peer content sharing. I would challenge that it's also really good for business to business these days. I think you can do a lot of work with the targeting, especially on Facebook. It's got the strongest demographic targeting of probably all the platforms. You can get right down to job title, likes, interests, marital status, financial status, financial wealth. You can do some quite detailed and deep targeting of people on Facebook these days. But predominantly for me, I think Facebook is the number one place to share and to tell your story, because it has a lot of tools to help you do that. It's a place where generally of all these platforms, people spend the most time, broadly speaking, when you read the stats. Generally speaking, people look at Facebook right throughout the day, but obviously it does get quite busy at 5 o'clock when lots of us who are working during the day suddenly get the mobile phone out and check where we've been up to, which moves us on quite neatly to LinkedIn. So if you're in any way part of a senior leadership team, on the management team, any kind of customer-facing area of your business, you really should be on LinkedIn. And you really should have a LinkedIn profile. If for nothing else, because it's a great place to keep all your kind of business background, education details all in one kind of centralized location. And it ranks really well on Google. You Google Andy Kent, and you'll probably get lots of pictures of Andy in various attire, but you'll also get his LinkedIn profile and his Twitter profile ranking quite well. So there's an SEO Google ranking benefit of being on lots of these platforms as well. But LinkedIn really is a place for business professionals to connect and to network. That's what it was started for. That's what it's still good for today. If you're selling B2B, LinkedIn's the place to be sharing your content, sharing your story, and using the platform to its fullest. And then finally, you've got things like Instagram and Pinterest, the more picture-based, the more video and picture-based platforms. If you've got a very visual and engaging story to tell, Pinterest, Instagram, those types of platforms may be more suited to you. Having said all that, what is actually the most important thing to do is to understand where your customers are, which platforms they're going to be on. How do they use the platforms? To do that, I would recommend that you have a strategy plan for social media. I would definitely recommend you'll have your business objectives, which you get from the board, from the management team, which will be based around revenue and profit, etc. Then you translate them down into a wider marketing plan, which says, this is our customer, these are the segments, this is our message, this is how we're going to go to market, this is our commercial model. Then for each of your marketing channels, social media being one of them, have a plan. It doesn't necessarily need to be a 50-page plan, although obviously the more detailed the better. But it should include these kind of key bits. So it should have an audit of where you're up to. Are all your platforms branded? Are they all communicating the same message? What are the objectives? Is it lead generation? Is it brand awareness? Is it supporting the sales cycle? Is it a customer service tool? Who is your audience? Can you label them? Can you segment them better? We target marketing managers, directors in the north of England who have companies or part of companies that are turning over 1 million to 50 million and who have an active need for branding websites or digital marketing. That's our customer. That's our primary segment. So we know that and we work on that, and all our marketing is based around attracting and engaging with that specific audience. Then you've got your campaign tactics. That's basically when to tweet, how to tweet, who to tweet, what to say, who's going to do it, who's going to respond, who's going to do the engagement and the following, etc. The more practical kind of day-to-day communications plan. Then who's going to do all the response? That's very important. Is it going to be your customer service team? Is it going to be your sales team? Is it going to be your leadership team? If someone makes a comment, who's going to engage? If the comment is bad, who's going to engage? Is it going to be stock answers? Is it going to be on the fly? There's lots of things to think about when you're doing a social media plan. Security and risk management, get your passwords secure, make sure they're long, make sure they're super secure passwords. And obviously, as Andy said at the start, how are you going to analyze the success of the campaign? What are you going to measure it against? Traffic is one way to measure it. Followers is one way to measure a good campaign. But I would argue that engagement and the actions that come from the engagements are by far and away the most important thing. Getting them back to your website, getting them into your sales funnel, getting them into your engagement plan. As Andy said right at the end of Mufasa is, how many times will they engage with Angel? That's an important metric for what Andy does. If he says, I think a person will buy more if they engage 10 times a year, there's no point in them engaging once because they're not going to buy. It's a good start, but it's not a key metric for Andy. And what I would do, I would print it, I would bind it, I would put it on the desk. I would have it there so you cannot miss it. As Andy says, what do you got, lumpy mail, Andy? I'm the same. I still like business cards. I still like sending letters. I still sign the letters. You have fancy signature at the end. I like the real world. I like to be able to engage with people. I like to be able to tell the story when people go, bloody hell, your business card's huge, Phil. I couldn't break it. I like things in the physical world. I think it makes them real. I think it makes them more tangible. So when we do this exercise, we get them printed and bound for you, and we'll give you 5 copies. So, second bit of this session is, there is 3 simple things that make up a social media campaign. That's it. The 3 things you need to do. You need to deliver content, you need to listen and engage, and you need to grow your following. Keeping it really, really simple. What do I mean by that? Content is literally getting stuff out there into the world. Text contents, image content, video content, infographics, pictures of Andy in various attire. It works apparently. It can be press releases, it can be photographs, it can be videos, it can be polls and research, it can be anything you want. But it has to be you giving it out, it has to be you paying it forward and putting great content into the world. And I mean great content. I don't mean pictures of what you have for breakfast. Every now and again you can put a breakfast picture in there just to lighten the mood. Scones, for example. Yeah, like I did about an hour and a half ago. The focus of your content has to answer the simple question. And that question is, what is my customer's problem? What is their problem and how can I help them solve it? So for Elephant Digital, I want to solve the problem of marketing managers and directors saying to me, Phil, how do I create a marketing strategy? What's the best channel to use? What should my message be? Should I be on social media? So all our content is based around helping them solve that problem or those variations of the problem. So what is your customer's problem? Listening and engagement, number 2. Social media, like the campfire, is about listening. Generally speaking, in our house, there is some listening at the same time as talking. More talking than listening, to be fair, because we all tend to talk at once and compete for the limelight. But when you talk, there's a two-way conversation. There's a listening element as well. And that's what social media is also really good for. You can use hashtags and the search functions to see what people are talking about in the world. And when you start to listen and you start to get a feel for what's going on, then start to engage. Start to comment, start to like, start to share, start to repost. Start to add a bit more value to other people's conversations. I think Andy mentioned this a couple of times in his talk as well. And in doing that, you become the guy or the company that likes to listen. Everybody likes to be listened to. Everyone likes to have their opinion heard. And I think it's only when you truly listen to somebody, you can then really add value back into the conversation. And that's the second part. Listen and engage. Ask questions. Ask for help, as Andy said before with his charity stuff. Form partnerships. Find mutual relationships. Find ways to connect, to engage with people. And the final bit is to grow your following. So you are generating great content. You're adding value to the world. Then you're listening and you're engaging, you're having conversations, you're starting to build that trust. Then finally, you start to grow the following. Not for vanity's sake, although sometimes that's a useful tool and a useful strategy for certain companies. There's two ways to grow your following. There is an organic route, which is the one that I would recommend, and that is by doing the first 2 points, delivering great content and really listening and engaging with your audience. That will naturally grow your following over time. The key to growing your following organically is reciprocal relationships, mutually beneficial content and events and actions and things that happen in the world. Andy is a fantastic example of doing that. Andy's business model is predominantly about partnerships and relationships. Would you agree, Andy? That's how he's been very successful. Yes, he's got great products. Yes, he's got great people and he's got a great culture, but he gets that out into the world by partnering with people, with charities, local authorities, organisations that will find that mutual benefit. There is a more engineered route for growing your following. So I'll give you a couple of quick tips if you want to do this. I'm not saying don't. We've tried it and we do it for certain companies. So for example, on Twitter, you could follow 1,000 people. You will get somewhere between 10 and 20% follow you back. So if you followed 1,000 a week, you could grow your following by 100 to 200 people per week. Pretty structured, pretty sound. That's the industry stats, not mine. So you could say to your boss, I'm going to grow our following by 200 followers per week. Sounds pretty good. I'm sure most people here will be pretty happy with that. You get quite a lot of attrition from that. You will lose 75% of those 100 to 200 every week. But if your content's really good, you'll keep a good 25 to 30% of them. So there's still value in doing a Twitter follow campaign. On LinkedIn, you can do a similar approach. You can connect with 1,000 people, and you can expect somewhere between a 30 and 50% connection request rate, which means that around 300 to 500 are going to follow you back. And then suddenly you've got 300 to 500 people that are in your network. The key to that is make sure all your connection requests are bespoke. Hi Andy, read your profile.
Hope you're well.
Hope you're well. Lovely to see you again. Do you want to connect? Love and kisses, Phil. That works. It's a great way to develop business. And there's a few other ways on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest, but broadly speaking, you can also you can grow your following quite dramatically if you have got a focused approach to doing so. The most important thing to take away from today from myself is the 80-20 rule for social media. I would argue from experience, from the stats that I've seen, that 80% of your content should not be about you at all. Should not be promotional, shouldn't be selling you, shouldn't be even positioning you necessarily in a lovely, wonderful, fluffy light. I would argue 80% of your content and your time and your engagement should be making other people look good. Should be complementing and generating interest in other people's brands, in other people's stories. Why? For two reasons. One, it's how you start the partnerships and relationships approach. You've got to pay it forward. You've got to start the process yourself. You can't wait for people to engage with you. And number two, pop quiz for 10 points. In an average day in the UK, from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep, how many brands do you see? How many logos, companies? Anyone want to hazard a guess?
Is it like
Hundreds or thousands?
hundreds or
Hundreds of thousands. Go on, give me a number, somebody. 200. 200. 2,600.
It's like 100,000, I think.
It's about 10,000 a day. 10,000 brands a day. Think about how many cars we see on the drive from home to work. How many logos in the back of those cars do you see? Audi, Volkswagen, BMW, etc., etc. the cereals you eat, the TV you watch, the radio, the Facebook ads flicking through your Facebook feed, in the paper. 10,000 brands we're aware of every day. And what have we all become incredibly good at doing? Ignoring every one of them. It's an incredibly crowded market. And when all you see is ads, you just delete out of your brain. Whereas if somebody says, "Hi Andy, hope you're well. Tell me about you. What's going on?" It makes you go, "What? Well, someone wants to know about me. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I'm very well, thank you." That's my argument. 80% is not about you. It's about other people, about connections, relationships, partnerships. 20%, absolutely. Promote your products, promote your brand, tell your story. Couldn't argue more. Last thing I'm going to talk about is just a few tools that we use that are really, really useful. You can schedule content. You don't need to post all your content live and in the moment. If there's certain things that you know is going to happen, like Christmas Day, Easter, company birthdays. If, for example, you're off on holiday for the next 2 or 3 weeks and you want to schedule your content, on all the platforms now, pretty much, you can schedule any type of content you want using Hootsuite. This is called Hootsuite. It's free up to 3 profiles. There's a premium version, I think, at £20 a month for more than 3 profiles. It's brilliant. It's definitely consider it. If for nothing else, just to keep all your content in one place and keep your plan in one place. There's lots of tools out there like Hootsuite, but that's one I'm just going to throw into the mix. Next one is LinkedIn Helper. It's a premium tool. I think it's quite expensive, depending on kind of what you want to do, but it's something like £10 to £15 a month. It's a really, really useful tool if you spend a lot of your time on LinkedIn, and if your business development strategy and marketing strategy is around connecting with people on LinkedIn and generating, conversations and inquiries via LinkedIn. It does some great stuff, like it automatically visits profiles for you. So you can just select 1,000 profiles to go and visit, and literally just open the page of Andy Kent, or scroll down the page, and that's it. But what happens when people visit your profile? Everybody's nosy. And you get around 10, 20, 30% visit you back. And you might just catch them at the right time and they're thinking, actually, I wish Phil would bloody stop visiting my profile. I'm sure Laura gets this all the time. And it's got a million other tools that I haven't even looked at yet. It's a great tool to try if LinkedIn is the focus of your social media. I also quite like Twitter Follower Pro. Again, another freemium tool that starts off free. I think there's a monthly subscription. It's very, very simple, really. Just if you have a list of people you want to follow, and you say, well, I'll follow everybody from Independent Liverpool, local businesses in Liverpool, and there's 1,000 of them, you can just open the page and click follow, and it will follow them all for you. So if you're doing a Twitter follow campaign, it's quite easy to do. And you can go on the next week and then just go unfollow all of those people, or unfollow the ones that didn't follow you, if that makes sense. So there's tools to make your life a little bit easier. Finally, I just want to give you one example from John Deere. I think that content marketing is closely wrapped up in social media these days. And the ability to tell a good story is absolutely fundamental. One of the best examples I've come up with recently is, well, I'll let them tell their story.
While not the oldest example in the world, my favorite example is probably John Deere's The Furrow magazine.
My name's Bart. I'm 37 years old. I've lived on this farm my entire life. I can remember being 5, 6 years old. We were dairy farmers at that time, and bucket feeding calves, bottle feeding calves. That's how we started. I bought this farm from my dad. He's the second generation, about 10 years ago. And we raise corn, soybeans, and wheat, and we also raise beef livestock. I'd say I've been getting the furrow and reading the furrow for about 5 years now. I will say that I think the articles in the furrow are very neutral. I mean, to the point that I always wondered, is this a John Deere magazine or not?
The furrow came along in 1895 when our company was under the direction of John Deere's son, Charles. he recognized that need for farmers to have an accurate, unbiased source of information. Anything that we think farmers can use to improve their operations, that's something that's going to make it into the furrow.
I try to key in on the soil health and soil fertility. Fertilizers have gotten very expensive through the years, and how you apply them is very important, not only economically, but also for the environment. I don't know where a company like John Deere sits on soil conservation as far as no-till versus being a more conventional type. To me, I think a company like that has more to gain when people are working more ground, but you know, the furrow doesn't just talk about that if they do it all. I mean, it's more about the opposite of that.
If you go back through the entire history of the magazine, I would be very surprised if in that editorial space you saw the words John Deere mentioned more than 15 or 20 times, and that's going back 120 years. That veil of secrecy has been lifted off of marketing. People know when they are being marketed to. The John Deere brand still stands for something. It stands for quality. It stands for honesty. That's been a critical component of not just the furrow's success, but of John Deere's success overall.
In 123 years of producing the Furrow magazine, they think the brand's been mentioned about 15 times. That's their in-house company magazine that's promoting John Deere. 15 times in 123 years. For me, I think it's one of the finest examples of content marketing. And I think it's a great example of how they tell their story in a very subtle and a very genuine way. And it's all about them actually following the 80-20 rule and paying it forward, giving it all the information out ahead of the time and saying, when you're ready to buy, we hope we've done enough to convince you that we're the brand that you should choose. So I challenge you all to think about, in your companies, how can you tell your story? More importantly, what your story is. And if you've got a great story to tell, then social media could be the right way to tell that story. I hope that was of use. Thank you very much.